we have quite a few people joining us. I'm very excited to introduce our speaker today, my friend and colleague, Matt Gerges. Matt is one of our resident search wizards and on our enterprise customer success team here at SeekOut. And as I mentioned today, he'll be introducing you all to Boolean. So what is it and how can we use it within the SeekOut platform to find talent quicker, easier, and more effectively? Matt is an experienced former recruiter who has supported Microsoft partners and end users, as well as led diversity recruiting initiatives for some of America's leading brands. So without further ado, Matt, I'll go ahead and pass this on over to you.
Thank you, Skylar, for the wonderful introduction, and welcome all, wherever you're tuning in from, whether it's morning, evening, afternoon. Really appreciate you taking the time to join us today. And today's going to be a really good session. We're going to keep it high level and pretty simple, but it's going to be really important if you are just learning Boolean, what Boolean is, or if you just want a refresher. It is Beginner Boolean 101. It's a brand new webinar series that we're going to be giving. As Skylar mentioned early on, we will also be doing intermediate and advanced courses, as you could say, but really webinars, trainings. I think Boolean is very, very important to learn, whether you're a veteran recruiter or just coming out and learning recruitment for the first time. Boolean is going to really help you get to the next level. And today we're going to keep it pretty simple. It's just going to be the fundamentals of Boolean, but you can get really, really into it, especially in a platform like SeekOut, which offers unique Boolean operators, more on the intermediate and advanced side. But today we're going to be keeping it high level. Again, we're going to be talking beginner Boolean concepts, which you could use in SeekOut as well as other tools. This is going to be SeekOut oriented. So everything I'm going to show you, I'm going to be in SeekOut for. But as Skylar mentioned, I'm a former recruiter, and so I'm excited to share this with you all today. And so without further ado, let's get to the next slide. Learning objectives for today, I always think it's important to outline these. Really, again, just understanding the fundamentals of a keyword-based search, using Boolean operators to string keywords together and execute more targeted searches. So Boolean is really a way for you to control your search results, which if you're already spending a ton of time reviewing inbound applications, you don't want to spend more time reviewing profiles that don't match when you're in control of your search, right? And so number 3, the most important learning objective today is how to cut down on the needless time reviewing unqualified profiles. Now, I think we need to take a step back and just understand what is Boolean. If you've never heard that word before, if you've heard that word before, you're kind of like, well, what does that mean? It does come from mathematics. It was originally formulated in 1847 by an English mathematician named George Boole, which is where it gets its name from. And it's a logic that uses a system of symbols that represents relationships between entities. Now, don't go to sleep yet. That's really the only mention of mathematics that we're going to do today. Really, I think it's important just to understand, where does Boolean come from? What do we mean when we're talking about Boolean operators, commands? It is a way to alter your search, right? And it's using these symbols that connect the keywords or key phrases that are present in a job description or notes from an intake meeting with a recruiter or a hiring manager. It's going to allow you to formulate an effective search based on the job description or based on that intake meeting. So in the context of a search engine, whether it's Google or SeekOut, a Boolean search is a type of search where you combine keywords and what we call operators to limit, widen, or define your search for better results. Now, today we're going to be talking a little bit about what those operators are. You've probably seen them before. If you haven't, don't worry, this session is going to be perfect for you. I threw an example of what a Boolean search looks like, very basic, with some operators that we'll be covering today. But let's get into what those operators are. There's 5 basic Boolean operators. There's and, there's or, there's not, there's parentheses, which you can call brackets, and there's quotations, which are often called nesting. Now, Boolean search, you can think of it very simply as keywords plus Boolean operators, right? So you're stringing your keywords together with an operator to create a keyword string, a Boolean search, right? So it's any mix of keywords, key phrases that you're getting from the job description or just notes that you want to find in specific profiles. And it's how you're stringing them together to control your search results, right? You don't want to go through thousands of results. You want to get the right candidates right away. And if you're a Boolean wizard or you're just understanding of these basic operators, it's going to make finding that talent so much more effective, easy, and less time consuming, right? Which as recruiters, we all understand it takes a lot of time to fill a position, right? You need to reach out to hundreds of candidates, right? Just to find that one person that accepts and takes the role. And most recruiters, you have a lot of roles on your plate, right? And so if you can't get the number of inbound and quality of inbound applications, you're going to have to go and find those candidates, which is becoming ever more important in today's market, right? But let's jump into it. So we showed you all the 5 basic Boolean operators. We have and, we have or, we have not, we have parentheses, and we have quotations. Let's talk about the first one. And this is the most simplest of operators. It finds profiles with multiple keywords. It also narrows your search. So what does that mean? Let's say I'm working on a search where it's a tech search and the hiring manager says that we need to have candidates who have experience with 2 different programming languages, Java and Python, right? So you're probably going to go out and you're probably going to look for profiles that contain those 2 keywords, right? Java, Python, and connects them. Essentially, what your keyword search is going to look like is Java and Python, because what you're doing is you're telling the computer, I want these 2 keywords to show up in every profile, right? Not one or the other. I need the candidate to have both keywords. Now you'll see there's 2 different ways that I've written this, Java and Python, and then just Java, Python. These are both the same thing. One of the most interesting and easiest to understand operators is and, because a space infers an and. You don't even have to write and. You can just write your 2 keywords and the computer's already going to assume that you mean and. Let's test this out. I'm going to pull up SeekOut and I'm going to zoom in on my keywords search. Now, everything we're doing today is going to be applicable in this little keywords search box. Or if you go to Google and you just start a search, right? You're typing into a keyword search box. If you didn't know, you can use Boolean in Google. It's a search engine. These are typical commands that you can go and apply to any search engine. Again, today, the context is going to be SeekOut. There's a couple nuances, especially because SeekOut offers some advanced Boolean that I can't use anywhere else. But again, we're going to keep it simple. And everything we're going to do today is going to be in this keywords box. Let's show you that example we just did. Java and Python. What we're telling SeekOut to do is we're telling SeekOut to find profiles that have both of these keywords. However, I just told you all, you don't even need to write and. Wipe that from your memory. You don't even need to know and. All you need to know is that when you put 2 or more keywords in or key phrases, you're telling the search engine, I need the profiles that come back, that result back from my search. They need to have all of these words. So anytime you just use a space, that automatically infers an and. I don't need to go and write and. All I need to do is put a space. Bam, just like that. Now, what I put in the example was a line break, right? A line break is shift plus enter in the keywords box in SeekOut. I can do it like this, or I can put another line break and do it like this. 2 spaces, 3 spaces, line break, 2 line breaks, 3 line breaks. It doesn't matter. It's always going to assume Java and Python. A space will always infer an and. 2 spaces, 3 spaces, 4 spaces does not matter. It's going to assume you're looking for folks that have both of these keywords in their profile. Simple enough, right? So again, you can write it any way you'd like. You can write Java space Python. You can do a line break. Again, that's shift plus enter at the same time. I generally prefer putting spaces as line breaks, so you can start a new string with each line. You know, maybe in my next line, I want them to have SQL experience, and I need them to have scripting experience, right? So you can put all of these out, or you can throw all of them together like this. It's the same thing, right? So, and it's the most basic of operators. You're saying I need them to have all of these keywords. Now, the more keywords you add, the more you're going to narrow your search. So an and narrows your search. Basically, you're having the candidate need to have one keyword, then you're needing them to have two keywords, then you're needing them to have three keywords, then you're needing them to have four keywords with this example, right? So you're only going to get profiles that have all four of these. If there's a candidate that only has Java, Python, and SQL, but they don't have scripting, they're not even going to show up in your search results. All right. So think about it that way. If you have a lot of requirements, think about what requirements are most important, right? Because again, you might be a good candidate, but if you only have these three on your profile, you're not going to show up in the search. And as a recruiter, you're going to miss out on that candidate because they don't have the word scripting, which may be your intention, but it may not be your intention, right? So every time you add a keyword, every time you add a new phrase, you're saying, I need all the profiles to have all these things that I've added already, and as well as this new thing. So that's and. I know we've probably gotten a lot of questions in the chat already. If not, we can move on to the next one, but I will pause probably in between each operator and open it up for one or two questions. And we will also do a full Q&A at the end. But yeah, any questions at this point?
Hi, Matt. So we had a clarifying question. Do I need to actually use and?
Great question. No, you do not need to use the word and. So again, I'll use colors just because I like to use colors. This is basically using an and. This is saying red and blue. I need both I need every profile that results back in my search to have both of these keywords, red and blue. This is the exact same thing as writing this. The computer is going to identify any spaces, and it's going to infer them as an and. So whether you write it like this, whether you write it like this, whether you write it like this, it's all the same thing. You don't need to use and.
How do I create a line break?
Oh, good question. It's my favorite thing now. Shift plus enter at the same time will get you some line breaks. So you can just hold shift and tap enter, and each tap of enter will give you a line break. Super, super useful to use, especially as you build more complex searches and you need the extra space, because writing all on the same line can get a little confusing once you start doing some pretty long searches. Anyway, great question.
I need to include commas.
Do you need to include commas? No, that is a great question as well. Commas do not work in SeekOut. I believe there's only a couple search engines, and I believe there might be ATSs. I can't speak for certain because, again, I'm just focused on SeekOut today. But commas do not work in SeekOut. So yeah, I think the question is, if I put red, comma, blue, no need even for commas. You don't need any sort of symbol. It's just a space, and that's an and.
Do I need to capitalize my operators?
Another good question. You should capitalize them. Now, again, I can't speak for other search engines. I know technologies are always changing. I know SeekOut is a pretty intuitive platform, so it'll actually understand that a lowercase and means red and blue. You could do lowercase, same thing with the other operators. I would recommend that you capitalize them though. Now, as far as the other keywords, right? If I'm just saying red, blue, Java, Python, does not matter if they're capitalized or not. I could, put red like this, does not matter. It's the same thing as put in red like this. But for operators, again, doesn't matter. But the reason why I do recommend it is because most search engines, it does matter. Again, SeekOut's intuitive. It's going to understand if you're not capitalizing it. But what happens is the longer your keyword string is, sometimes you have to go back and you have to fix a mistake. You have to add a parenthesis or a quotation. We'll get into that as well. Or you have to add an or statement or an and statement, which is what we have here. It's called a statement. Red and blue is a statement. It's way, way, way easier to identify your operators if they are written in caps. So the longer you run your statement, the more keywords there are, the more key phrases the more different variations of phrases that you use and the variations of keywords and spellings of those keywords, it's really, really beneficial if you capitalize them. I would just recommend getting in the habit of capitalizing them. You don't need to. You could put lowercase, but only in SeekOut. There may be a couple others where you don't need to capitalize as far as search engines go, but you should always capitalize them. It's just much easier to see, and that's transferable across all search engines.
Does the order of the words matter? Does it prioritize?
Good question. No, the order does not matter. I could put blue, red, just like this. It's the same thing, right? If I put blue on top of red, same thing. The only thing that matters is that the profiles that result back have to have the word blue and they have to have the word red. Whether you put it first, put it second, put it on top, doesn't matter.
And we'll call it for now. We have lots of questions, but I want to let you move on.
Absolutely. These are great questions by far. And so please, please, please continue to throw your questions in the chat. But that's and. Super simple. Again, you're finding profiles that have multiple keywords. The profiles that result back have to have the keywords that you're putting in, right? And is just what connects them. It narrows your search. Now, the complete opposite of and. If and narrows your search or broadens your search. What if I wanted to say that the profile could have Java or it could have Python, right? I'm working with the same hiring manager. They said, okay, you know what? We're having a tough time finding people that have both Java and Python. Just find me folks that have one or the other, right? How would you type that into a search? That's when you use the word or finds profiles with either keyword. So in this instance, it would be Java or Python, right? And we'll get into the parentheses in just a second, but focus on the keywords. Again, it's the same thing as and, except it does the opposite. You want to put it in between your keywords. It's an operator, it's a command, but it's going to do an entirely different thing. Instead of finding profiles that have both words like Java and Python, you're going to find profiles that have one or the other. They could have Java or Python. Now, if they do have both keywords, if they do have Java and Python, they will still show up in your search. So technically it's Java or Python or all of the above. Right, let's get into an example of that. Red or blue. Do red or blue. Again, order does not matter. I could put blue first, and then I could put red. How you write it, you can use line breaks. So this is okay. You can say blue or red, as long as these two are together. Now, anytime you're writing an or statement, you need to put your statement in parentheses. And again, we're going to get into parentheses, but I think while we're on the topic of or, it's really important to mention that this is really the one rule that I think is going to be most important that comes out of today's training is put your ors in parentheses. So whether it looks like this, or it looks like this, or it looks like this, it's all the same thing, right? I could put red first. I could capitalize blue, doesn't matter. I'm saying the profiles that result back in my search can have just red, they can have just blue, or they can have both. It's going to broaden your search. It's going to find you people that maybe just have red. It's going to find you people that might just have blue, and it's going to find you people that have both, right? Whereas opposed to red and blue, when we put those together, the profiles absolutely have to have both. I personally think out of all the basic operators, or is the most important, right? Because a lot of the times you have to think, how is someone writing this keyword on their profile, right? Different languages, different experiences, different skills, they have different spellings, or a candidate might write it on their profile differently, right? So use an or statement there, right? Use an or statement to try to grasp all of the various spellings and ways that someone might write something. I like to use an example. Think about project management, right? Someone might put project management, but they also might put PM. If you just search verbatim project management, and I'm going to use quotes for this because we'll get into that, but you have to keep the words together. You have to use an or. You have to say or PM, because some people might list it as PM. Some people might list it as project management. Some people might say manage projects, right? So that's another or manage projects. You have to think about all of the different ways where something might be written. Or if you have a hiring manager that is keen on a couple skill sets, and those skill sets can have transferable skill sets, right? Like think about for those tech recruiters out there, Microsoft Cloud or Azure, or someone that just has cloud experience, but it's not Microsoft Cloud, it's AWS, it's Amazon. You have to use an or statement to say Azure or AWS or cloud, right? You have to always think about how people might put it on their profile. So again, or you're telling the computer, I want someone that has one or the other or both. So it's going to broaden your search. You're going to get the people that have one, the other, and both. Now, again, or statements, they always go in parentheses. I'm going to touch on parentheses next. Keep that in mind. I'll open it up for questions.
Okay, we have a couple of questions. So we have a question that may be slightly more advanced. Operator, if you are searching the keyword scripting, but a candidate only has script without the ing, will they still show up in your search?
Yeah, I like where your head's at, whoever asked that question. SeekOut, very intuitive tool. We will auto stem. We will stem verbs. So if I just look up the word script, I'm going to find people that wrote scripting, scripted, script. We will auto stem. We will verb stem based on tense, right? Past, present, future. So yes, scripting will find script. It will find scripted. It'll find scripting.
Okay. Let's see here.
Automatic.
Okay. Mike, do you have any questions you'd like to bring to the front?
Sure do. So, from Mary Hunt, the last string you wrote, does that need to be in parentheses, project management or managed project? And then going off that as well, why weren't there quotes around manage projects?
Yes, good question. I'm going to answer that once we get into parentheses and quotations. Good question.
Okay.
They tie, so everything is so integrally tied. It's hard to show one without also talking about the other. So yeah, good question. Good question. We will answer that.
I think we can move on for now.
Cool. All right. Well, let's enter it now. Parentheses. So we've talked about and, we've talked about or. And means they have to have both or all of the keywords that you've listed with an and conjoining them or a space. Or means that they have to have one or the other or both, right? What do parentheses do? When do I use parentheses? This is called nesting. What parentheses do is they allow the computer to know your order of operations. Similar to mathematical equations, right? The answer will depend on where you put the parentheses. So if you think back to high school math class, you learn about PEMDAS, right? It's okay. If it's too far back or you slept through it, you don't need to worry about it. Basically, you're telling the computer what is an or versus what is an and. Okay. A lot of the time, you're going to build strings that can contain ands as well as ors, right? You're not just going to do one or the other. So in this instance, I'm saying I want people with sales and retail or consumer experience. Well, let's think about this. And let me actually write it in the keywords box here. I do sales and consumer or retail, right? Now, let me take the parentheses off. If I just type this in, the computer's not going to know what I mean. The search engine isn't going to understand. Am I saying I want them to have sales and consumer experience or retail, right? Like if they have retail, that's fine. But if they don't have retail, they have to have sales and consumer. Or am I saying I want them to have the word sales and then they can have consumer or retail, one or the other, right? Those are two different searches. Even though it's the same keywords with the same operators, right? And or, the results I get may mean different things. Again, you want to nest your operations. You want to tell SeekOut, this is what I need to have, and this is what the or is, right? Again, if I put parentheses around these, I'm telling SeekOut, I need every candidate to have the word retail. However, if they do not have the word retail, or if they don't have retail, they have to have sales and consumer. They have to have those two keywords. It's probably easier to visualize this when I write it like this. However, it's the same thing, right? They can have retail or they can have sales and consumer. They have to have one or the other, right? But that's different than doing it this way. That's different than saying, I want them to have the keywords retail or sales, and they have to have the word consumer. So every profile that shows up has to have the word consumer, and they have to have one or the other or both, retail or sales. This is why you just need to remember, always put parentheses around your or statements when you're saying, it can be spelled this way or this way or this way or this way, or similarly what we did with project management, right? It could be spelled project management, or it could be PM, or it could be managed projects. You need to have parentheses around everything. So correctly, how I would write that is project management, right? And I'll get into quotes again, but or PM, right? They might have it spelled that way, or they might have it spelled manage projects, right? That all needs to go in parentheses because you want to tell the computer what you're saying. You need to tell the computer, I want this or this or this. You're nesting that as one thing to focus on. And then you can say, and I want them to have sales, and I want them to have D2C. These are ands because you're saying, I want them to have one of these or multiple of these, and they have to have sales, and they have to have D2C. So every profile that shows up based on this search is going to need to have these two keywords, and they can have one or multiple of these. So or statements always go in parentheses. If we kind of take it back a second and just do really simple colors, red and blue or green. Again, if you just write it like this, the computer's not going to know what you're saying. Do you mean they can have red and blue or green? As in, if they don't have green, they have to have red and blue. They have to have both of these, right? Or are you saying they have to have red and then they could have one of these, blue or green? So think about parentheses as grouping your keywords together. Most of the time, if not all the time, if there's going to be Boolean that you use, it's going to be ands and ors. And so the parentheses are just an integral part of telling the computer what you need to do with those search terms. All Boolean operators are commands. They tell the computer to do specific things with your key phrases or your key terms. And so if you don't use them correctly, the computer's not going to know what to do. If I just hit search on this like this, there's no error that's going to pop up. I'm not going to know that I did it wrong because the computer is going to just assume both. It's going to say red and blue or green, or red and blue or green. However, that's not necessarily finding you the right results, right? In this instance, maybe I need the candidate to have the color red, and I need them to have one or the other, blue or green, or both. That's great if they have both, right? And so in that instance, you want parentheses around blue or green. So you're telling the computer, they need to have red, and then they could have blue or green. Any questions on that?
There's a few in the chat. Some people I still don't get the difference between and or, and then a bit more clarification, Matt, around the parentheses. If you could do a string with maybe more than 2 keywords to show the ors and how you can group the parentheses for nesting, that would be great.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's start just with and or. If I type in 2 words, I'm telling the computer, I need both of these words. Anytime you type a word in, you're telling the computer, I need profiles with this word, right? Like if I just put the word red, I'm telling the computer I need the profiles that contain the word red. If they do not have the word red, they are not going to show up in my search results, right? So that's what the keyword section does. I think if we take a step back and could kind of just talk about what the keyword section is, that'll kind of help frame the topic. A keyword section looks for results that contain the keywords. It's an area where you can list all the skills or specific words that you're looking for. And we all know as recruiters, right? You get a job description, you look immediately at the qualifications section, right? You look at what are the different bullet points that would create a good candidate if they meet those qualifications. Usually there's some keywords in there that you need to see on a profile. Think about when you're reviewing a profile, you're looking for specific keywords, all right? Have they managed teams, right? Have they cold called? Do they have experience with project management, right? I'm gonna look for those words. Those are called keywords. This is the keywords box, and this is where you can search for them. So if I type in the word red, maybe, resume, and I know I'm talking about colors here, but let's say a resume or a job description says, I need them to have the word red or have experience with let's call it a programming language, red, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the keyword section. I'm going to type in red. I want to find profiles that have that word, right? And so SeekOut's going to result back all of the profiles that have the word red. What if there's also the word blue, right? I need profiles that have red and blue. I need them to have both. That's when I would use and, red and blue. But what we said was you don't need to write and. A space will do the same thing. If I just put red space blue, I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to find profiles that have both keywords. Anytime you type something into the keywords box, you are automatically finding profiles that meet all of the requirements listed. So if I just put red, blue like this, I'm going to have to find profiles. SeekOut's strictly going to surface me profiles that have both keywords. If you're a candidate and you only have experience with red, you are not going to show based on this search right now because you need to have both in order to show in my search results here. All right. That's what an and is. So you're saying multiple keywords, right? You're saying red, blue, green. Green's another one. I need them to have all three. You're implying an and with a space, but just to show you for simplicity, by writing a space, this is what you're saying. You need them to have all three. Think about the roles that you all recruit for, right? Usually there's a couple different keywords that you need to see on a profile, right? And so using the keyword section, you could just type in those keywords. And you're saying, I need this and this and this and this, right? Or is going to allow you to have some variation in your search, right? Let's say, technically speaking, you're working on a role that requires a skill set with cloud experience. I used this example earlier, but let's say you're working on a role that requires experience with cloud. Now, you have to think about, okay, well, if someone has experience with cloud, what are they writing on their profile? Not everyone uses the term cloud, right? Some people might name the cloud system they have experience with. Microsoft Azure, that's Microsoft's cloud, or AWS, that's Amazon's cloud, right? So you might have to figure out, okay, well, let me use an or statement because I want to find profiles that mention cloud or AWS or Azure, right? As long as they have one, they're going to show up in my search, right? Because that's what I care about. So I would write cloud or AWS or Azure. I'm saying that they have to have one of those to show up in my search. They don't have to have all of them. They just have to have one. And so it's really important when you think about ors, and again, I'm going to put it in parentheses because any or statement needs to go in parentheses. But when you're thinking about it, this is probably going to be the most useful operator to you, right? Because think about your searches. Most of the time, there's no one designated way to spell a skill set or to phrase a skill set, right? Even if you're just looking for AWS, think about that, right? Some people might put Amazon Web Services. Some people might spell it out. Some people might just put AWS. If I just search AWS like this, I'm going to get folks that only put AWS. If I search Amazon Web Services, I'm not going to find people that put AWS. I'm only going to find people that put Amazon Web Services. Now, they might have AWS, but they still have to have Amazon Web Services. I'm specifically looking for this phrase. In this instance, I'm going to use quotes, but again, we'll get into that. So you always have to think, okay, what are the different ways someone might write something, right? So an or statement would be perfect here, AWS or Amazon Web Services, because some people might write it this way, some people might write it this way. And I want to broaden my search, right? I don't want to exclude someone just because they write it one way or the other. I want to grab everyone that might have that experience and bring them into my search results, right? So always, it's a good exercise, actually. Think about the different ways someone might spell something or quote something or phrase something on their profile, right? There's no one way to do anything. And so you have to use or statements then to say, okay, it could be this, or it could be this, or it could be this. I forgot the second part of that question, Mike, but I believe it was on the topic of how I wrote a Boolean string that contained quotations, which again, quotations we'll get into on the next slide.
Perfect.
Any other questions? I don't know if I made it more complicated or helped to simplify it. So thank you all for sticking with me if this is your first time learning Boolean.
I think we're all set for now. Matt, maybe just one question for you. Do these operators work across all platforms, or is this specifically for SeekOut?
Good question. Ands and ors, parentheses, quotations. Yes, these are common operators. You can use them in other search engines, like for instance, Google. However, there are some nuances to how search engines recognize the keywords, like I mentioned with capitalization. In SeekOut, you don't necessarily have to capitalize and or, right? Not every search engine recognizes it that way. There's going to be a couple nuances. Today, we're just focused on SeekOut. So everything that I'm going to be explaining, discussing, it's going to be SeekOut specific, right? Because again, different search engines, they have these different nuances. I know not is something that we'll get into. I don't believe Google recognizes not. So again, different search engines have these different nuances. SeekOut, just in my experience as a recruiter, I've used a handful of tools. It's probably the most intuitive Boolean keywords box, Boolean search that you can run. There's also a lot of advanced operators that you can only use in SeekOut, but the ones that we're using today majorly work in other search tools. So yeah, but today we're going to keep it SeekOut specific. Good question.
One other question for you that just came in that I love. Is there any more power in using Boolean in SeekOut over the search filters, or should we be using those in tandem?
Very good question. I believe to be an experienced recruiter and to find candidates as fast as and accurately as possible, you should be using a healthy mix of both Boolean and filters. Now, you don't have to use Boolean to find what you're looking for, but it's going to make it a lot easier. And there's things that filters can't necessarily do, right? For instance, with finding the word sales on a profile. I want someone that's in sales, right? As far as filters go, I can only really look at titles, right? I can look at the skills section of a profile. What keywords does is it searches the entire profile. And in SeekOut specifically, depending on the seat access you have, it might be searching across multiple profiles, right? Whereas the filters are a little bit more fixed. So in this instance, where I'm searching the word sales, I am searching the candidate's entire profile for any mention of this keyword sales. As long as they have this keyword sales somewhere on their profile, it doesn't matter where it is, they're resulting back in my search, which is what I think as a recruiter you want to do, right? You want to search the entire profile. Filters are going to filter that. They're going to restrict you a little bit, right? Because if I use a title filter, guess what? It's just looking at the title. It's not searching their entire profile, right? If I go to current title, it's only going to look at the current title section of their profile. If I go to past title, even if I do current or past, I'm searching just that section of a profile. Whereas keywords allow you to search the entire profile. I've recruited for quite some time, and I've used both. The majority of the roles that I recruit for now, honestly, I use probably 80% keywords Boolean string because of the flexibility, because of the exactness that it allows you to run. Again, these Boolean operators, they're commands. They tell the computer what to do. You have full autonomy over your search when you use the Boolean box, when you use the keyword search box here. You can use the filters. I would definitely recommend using filters, right? Because you're going to want to filter by country, location, state. You might want to use a SeekOut power filter. You might want to filter by years of experience, right? These are all things that you would want to do with the filters. But as far as searching for keywords, right, where you want to find someone that has this exact keyword or key phrase, the keywords box, there's nothing that beats it. Again, you have the skills section of a LinkedIn profile, and I'm going to specifically say LinkedIn because that's the main profile where someone updates their skills. But how many people are actually updating that as they get new jobs or new experiences? I know for me and a lot of people I know, the only time you update your skills section is when you first create your profile, right? And so it's not the best way to search. I think rather you search the position description, the headline. There's a lot of good, the summary section, the about me section. There's a lot of good snippets of a profile where someone might put this experience, but you don't know. Some people might put the fact that they have sales experience in their summary. Some people might put it as a job title or as a description of that job. You never know, right? And SeekOut being a verbatim search, you don't want to accidentally exclude anyone just because they don't have that word specifically in a certain portion of their profile, right? That doesn't make them unqualified. You're just not searching for them as broadly as you should be. So you're not getting all the results that you might need in order to make that placement, right? So I think the keywords is great. For searching general key terms, phrases that you might want to see in a profile, because again, it's going to search the entire profile, and you have full autonomy over how you search the profile and how the computer interprets those keywords. Or filters, again, they're a little bit more stagnant. They're great. I think you should use a healthy mix of both. And you don't have to be a Boolean wizard. You don't have to create super long, complex strings. As long as you have a solid understanding of and, or you're able to write it out, you're going to be just fine. Any other questions on that? All right. I know we talked through parentheses. Okay, so just to recover that, parentheses allow you to tell the computer what you are actually searching for, right? Again, if I go, and I'm going to explain this because this is probably the most complex item in today's training session. Everything else, pretty straightforward. I think just how to use parentheses, that's when it starts to get a little foggy. This is the most complex thing for basic Boolean. So if you understand this, you're good to go. Again, it's pretty simple. Think about it this way. Again, I always like to use colors because they're simple. But if I write this, right? The computer's not going to know what I mean. Do they want to, is it asking the computer to search for folks that have blue or red and green? Or is it saying they have to have red and green or blue? It's order of operations, right? So this is saying they have to have red and green, or they can have blue, as long as they have one or the other, right? Or is the key factor here, right? I'm saying they have to have blue, or they have to have red and green. Because red and green is parentheses, I'm saying that these have to stick together, right? They have to have red and green, or it can have blue. Now that's a totally different search than putting the parentheses around green or blue. Because the previous search, I said they need to have blue or they can have red and green. As long as they have red and green, they're good. Or if they just have the word blue, they're good. Now, this is a completely different search. I'm saying they have to have red and they have to have green or blue. So they must, every profile has to have red, right? And then they can have one or the other, green, or blue, right? As long as they have one, they're good to go. If they have red and green, they're good. If they have red and blue, they're good. If they have red, green, and blue, even better. They have all three, right? But they have to have red. So you'll see how the search changes depending on where I put my parentheses. I think the majority of the time you're using parentheses, it's really going to be in this way. You're going to use it for your or statements, which is why I just say, don't think too hard on it. Just always, whatever you put in an or statement, put parentheses around it, right? If you're saying, they have to have sales and retail or consumer, where's the or statement? It's this one, right? Retail or consumer. So just put parentheses around it. Really, I mean, you don't even have to really understand it, I don't think. As long as you just know or statement, put parentheses around it, you're going to be good to go. Essentially, again, you're telling the computer what your actual search is. I want them to have sales experience, and then they can have one of these keywords. Again, you're searching the entire profile for these specific words. All right. Now we'll probably come back to this because we are going to do Q&A at the end. And like I said, that's probably the most advanced concept we'll get into today. Let's go to the next one. So you saw me use these a little bit earlier, quotations. I think the number one thing I get from folks is, what's the difference between quotations, parentheses? When do I use one or the other? Again, think parentheses, just put those around your or statements. That's it. Quotations, they're used to search for phrases. I call this phrase searching. Quotations keep words together. So what happens is you're just searching profiles that have those two words that are in quotations together. And they can be used inside parentheses. What do I mean by that? Let's say I'm just, and I'll use the example I just showed. Let's say I'm searching for people with social media experience. Now, if I just type in social media like this, what's happening? I'm implying an and, right? I'm saying social and media by writing it like that. That's not necessarily my search, right? Yes, I'm going to find folks that have social media experience, but what's happening by doing this is I'm saying I want the word social to appear on the profile, and I want the keyword media to appear on the profile. What I'm missing out on is I'm missing on telling SeekOut that I want those two words to exclusively appear together, right? I don't want someone that has social in one job and then media in another job. No, I want specifically folks that have social media experience. So to keep these two keywords together, that's when you use quotes. You're saying, I specifically want folks that have social media written like this verbatim on their profile. If someone has social over here and they have media over here, they're not going to appear in your search. You're only going to get folks that have those two together. All right. Think about it this way. Going back to the colors example, red and green or blue, right? These are all single words. So I don't have to put quotes around them. But what if I want the search term? What if a keyword is navy blue, right? That's a color, navy blue. But I don't want someone that served in the Navy and they just have the word blue on their profile, right? I want specifically that key phrase. I want navy blue. And so to do that, I would say navy blue in quotes. So this is different than this. While yes, I'll find people that have navy blue together, I'm also going to find people with these keywords not together, right? This may be on one profile, this may be on another profile. Again, they have to have both words, but I want to find folks that specifically say navy blue, or in a real life example, social media, right? Again, we talked about project management. Project management is two words, so it needs to be in quotes because I want to keep those words together, right? If they have sales, great. If they have leadership, great, I'll type that in. Probably look for the word lead, right? Because that's how someone would write it on their profile. Sales can be anywhere on the profile, lead can be anywhere on the profile, but specifically these two words, They have to show up together. I need to see project management verbatim together, just like that. So anytime you want to search for a phrase, put it in quotes. Again, going back to the slide. It can also be used in parentheses. So, kind of putting things together now in practice. Let's say you want them to have project management. But again, we know that project management might be spelled PM. You might find a profile that just says PM. They might not write out project management, right? So you have to do or PM because you want to grasp profiles that have either or. It's an or statement now because I'm saying project management or PM. So or statements, what do you do with them? You put them in parentheses, right? And then I can continue my search, and then they also have to have sales. They also have to have retail, right? You can put in all of your other words, or you can use a line break, shift plus enter, and put in your other keywords. Doesn't matter how many spaces you do, whatever makes it look easier. This is probably easiest on the eyes, so I always recommend using a line break as opposed to doing it like this. But it's all the same thing. But again, quotes, use them to find phrases. And again, good idea is to put it in an or statement where there's other potential ways someone might write it on their profile. Another way someone might write project management is they may say they've managed projects, right? So manage project. And you can continue to add to your or statement, right? So play around with it. We see a lot of people put single words in quotes like this. You do not need to do that. Singular words do not need to be in quotes. The only time you use quotes is if you want to keep words together. You're searching for a phrase, right? About user experience, right? That's an actual skill set. That's an actual experience that you can have is being maybe in product design, you're focused on user experience. You don't want someone that has the word user and someone that has the word experience in totally different sections of their profile because maybe they don't have experience with user experience. They just happen to have those two keywords. So you wouldn't write it like that. You'd have to write it with quotes because you're specifically searching for folks that have user experience, verbatim, those two words together on their profile. Any questions on that one?
I did just want to remind everyone that we will be sending out a follow-up email to the call that will include the recording to this call, as well as some materials on more advanced Boolean. So you can expect to receive a couple of help articles, as well as a recorded training session for that. Mike, did you have any questions popping up in the chat that you'd like to share?
Just a few things here. So, a lot of folks have been coming in. This is specific to SeekOut. We will not be covering any Boolean tips and tricks when it comes to searching within LinkedIn Recruiter. Just want to get that out of there. We will, and Matt, correct me if I'm wrong, but we will not be discussing the not operator today. That will be for a future session. Matt, tell me if I'm mistaken there.
I'll touch on not today.
Okay.
We'll touch on not today. I think it's helpful to know, but these are really the core four.
Right.
But yes, we will talk on not, and that'll be the last thing we show today.
Okay.
Okay, we only have a few minutes left, but let's dive into not.
Yes. So if you made it this far, basically good to go. You can run an effective search. You know how to string your keywords together. The last of the basic operators, which kind of start getting you into the intermediate operations, is not. We talked about and, we talked about or. What does not do? Well, not is telling the computer that I don't want to see this keyword. Everything we've shown you up to today, or up to this point into today's training, is I want to see these keywords, or this keyword, or this keyword. Not tells SeekOut, I don't want to see. I want to specifically exclude profiles that mention this. In this example here, I'm saying, I want to find someone that has Java experience. Java is a programming language. Java can also be known as coffee, right? So if you're getting baristas in your search, folks that work at Dunkin', Starbucks, you're probably not looking for those folks. You're probably looking for software developers, right? Programmers, coders. And so if you want to remove any profiles that contain the word coffee, you say Java, not coffee. Now, the last thing we'll leave with is that this cannot be used by itself. So you can't start a search with just not something. Not is technically an extension of and. So it's actually and not. So you always have to put something first. So in this instance, I'm saying I want to find profiles with the word Java, but I don't want them to contain the word coffee. Now, if I wanted to show you this in SeekOut, I could say I want them to have the color red. I do not want profiles that have the word blue showing up. So I'll say not blue. I'm only going to get profiles with red. And even if you have red and you have blue, if you have blue, you're not going to show up in my search. So I'm excluding anyone that has this keyword. If I want to look at people in sales, but I don't want them to come from retail sales, I'll say sales, not retail. And you can have multiple nots, not retail, not consumer, right? It's how you exclude profiles from your search that contain certain keywords that you do not want to see. I know that brings us up to time. That was it for today. We are going to be sending out a presentation with the slides, as well as a SeekOut blog on Boolean. You all have access to our Help Center resources. Specifically, I've been showing you all the keyword section in SeekOut today. This little button right here, Advanced Search Tips, this brings you to SeekOut's Help Center, which walks through Boolean. It walks through everything we touched on today, as well as the more advanced operators. Take a look. I always recommend to new users, have these two tabs open when you're building a search. Have your SeekOut tab open, have this little Advanced Search Tips linked article open, because it's going to really help you. And we give you some helpful examples that you can just copy and paste. All right, that's it for me. Thank you all for joining.
Thanks, Matt. Thanks, everyone. Have a great rest of your day.